This is your Barbados Today Morning News Update for Friday, March 29th, 2019. Thanks for joining us. I'm Carol Williams. Today could be make or break time for LIAT. Trade unions have been given until 5 p.m. to say whether they'll accept a pay cut. At a meeting in Barbados Wednesday with Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley and the chairman of the LIAT shareholder government's Vincentian leader Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, they reportedly agreed to a 6% pay cut to keep the regional carrier afloat, but had to get back to members. Barbados Today has been told that if the trade unions and LIAT management don't reach an agreement by 5 this evening, the airline could collapse. That timeline is critical as Barbados' financial year ends on March 31st. So said officials in the Ministry of Finance are working around the clock so that in the event an agreement is reached, an emergency injection of funds would be made available to support the cash-strapped airline. If that money is not accounted for this financial year, Barbados, which is the main shareholder government, will be unable to inject any funds into LIAT due to IMF restrictions. The clock is ticking down to the March 31st deadline set by the government to wind up negotiations and devise a debt restructuring deal with external creditors. But there's no deal in sight. And acting Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Michelle Doyle-Lowe, is saying a new date hasn't been identified.
We're already at the end of March. It's a negotiation, and ultimately our ideal is to have it wrapped up because it is obviously creating a necessary or additional uncertainty. But at the end of it, there has to be some coming together of minds in terms of how we move forward. Remember that we're dealing with international investors where their holding of Barbados government debt is a very small element in their overall debt portfolio, but we know that at some stage we want to be able to partner with entities again and to go back to the international capital market. So it's important how we proceed on these matters. So ultimately there's no definitive date that I can say to you that it will be completed by X time. Our ideal is really that it be wrapped up sooner rather than later.
Meantime, veteran banker Ronald Harford, the chairman of Republic Financial Holdings Limited, doesn't believe commercial banks will be willing to take on government debt in the future other than what's mandated by law.
The banks are going to take a view, right, that if they are going to lend to governments, the debt to GDP must not exceed 60%. So the vast majority of the islands will not be able to access capital from the banking system. They'll have to go by CDB, right, the IMF, etc., to find the debt, right? And that is a lesson that came home very clearly and has sunk very strongly into the psyche of the banks in the region. Yes. When in negotiating the restructuring of the debt, the Barbados government could say to the banks that if you lend to a country whose debt to GDP exceeds 140%, you can't be serious about getting back all your money. That was like an axe that went into the heart of the banks, right? And they said, "It's so, all right, but we will need to be more wise about how we go forward." It is a very strong and brutal lesson that we've learned.
The two officials were addressing yesterday's 10th Domestic Financial Institutions Conference at the Central Bank. Crying for closure. 8 months on, 69-year-old Hazel Clark is still struggling to deal with the death of her daughter. 38-year-old Pauline was gunned down in front of her own 17-year-old daughter, who was also injured in the incident at Civilian Road, Bush Hall, St. Michael. She had just completed a workout session in the gym and had started her car when an unknown assailant approached her vehicle and fired multiple shots that pierced different parts of her body. Her mom tells Barbados Today it has been painful, and she's upset that no one has been charged for her daughter's murder.
It hurts. It leaves the parents of the person that got killed in a very, very bad state, like how I am. It's 8 months, and I still have that fresh feeling. Every day I question my child to see that somebody took my child life. She's gone, and whoever do it is still there. Nobody get hold for it. So I feel very bad about that. No one to have hold for my child. No one. Look how many murders the hard censors and the holy people, but nobody has been hold for my child. And I feel very hurt about that.
19-year-old Kadim O'Brien Clark appears in court today charged with the murder of Graham Addison Norville. Clark of Johnson Road, Workman's St. George, is scheduled to appear before the Oyston's Magistrates Court. 22-year-old Norville, a local actor also known as Shot Boss, was shot and killed on February 16 at Rock Hall, St. George.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
Turning now to Venezuela, Reuters News is reporting that the U.S. has instructed oil trading houses and refiners around the world to further cut dealings with Venezuela or face sanctions themselves, even if the trades are not prohibited by published U.S. sanctions. The move comes as Washington's efforts to oust President Nicolas Maduro in favor of opposition leader Juan Guaido stalled. Yesterday, the Venezuelan government said the opposition leader would be barred from public office for 15 years. Meantime, Russia yesterday said that specialists it sent to Venezuela under a military cooperation deal posed no threat to regional stability.
Thursday, Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman said the deployment falls under a military cooperation deal.
I would like to stress that Russian specialists and experts came to Venezuela in keeping with the provisions of a bilateral, intergovernmental agreement and military and technical cooperation. Russia is not changing the balance of power in the region. Russia doesn't threaten anyone, unlike officials in Washington.
Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido says the presence of Russian troops violates the country's constitution, and the United States made its feelings clear.
Russia has to get out.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence met with Guaido's wife, Fabiana Rosales, on Wednesday. They repeated that the U.S. stands firmly behind the opposition cause and called on Russia to withdraw.
And finally, we continue to keep an eye on the humanitarian crisis in Mozambique. The UN says it needs nearly $300 million in aid over the next 3 months to help the country's 1.7 million cyclone victims. It's harvest season in central Mozambique, but there are no crops left to gather. And worse, few have homes to live in. More from Al Jazeera.
It's a race against time to reach isolated cyclone survivors before malnutrition and disease break out. Helicopters are scouring the 3,000 square kilometre disaster zone in central Mozambique, searching for the vulnerable and overlooked who desperately need help. In the village of Barbados, 200 kilometres from Beira, they found 1,000 hungry people. If they ate something once a day, they were among the more fortunate.
We are very happy, because we have been many days without food, without clean water, and without sanitation as well. So when we saw this helicopter, people were very happy.
The World Food Programme brought 2 tons of high nutritional food, much to the relief of the villagers who lost everything in the cyclone: homes, crops, possessions, and some their loved ones.
This aid has come just in the nick of time for these people. Their food had run out. They were cut off for 12 days. The waters only receded here 4 days ago. They still need flour, they still need oil, and they still need medicine. But for now, they're okay, they're going to survive. But there are other isolated pockets like these around the country who still need help.
And that's news, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook. And sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as Crinplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM. I'm Carol Williams. Have a good day.